I learned firsthand that Jane is a rabid campaigner. She's an incredibly strong campaigner. When I worked on Scott Wiener's state Senate campaign, Jane came really, really close to beating Scott because she works super hard. So Jane, tonight we're going to ask you to speak for 10 minutes, and then we have a little stop sign right here. And then we'll ask you to take questions from the audience for 10 minutes. And we're going to ask you to repeat the question so that everyone can hear it. All right?
Good evening. Yeah. Right. Good evening. And wow, what an amazing turnout at Noe Valley Democrats. I really appreciate you all coming out on this really nice evening to Noe Valley Square, which I know that Todd David and many of you fought to make this into open space for our neighborhood. Incredibly important to convert spaces for cars into spaces for people. So congratulations on all of your work to make this a reality. My name is Jane Kim. I serve on the Board of Supervisors, and I've really had the pleasure and honor of serving the city over the last decade, starting on the Board of Education and now serving on the Board of Supervisors. I represent a neighboring district, District 6, which includes South of Market, Mission Bay, Treasure Island, Tenderloin, and the mid-market area. We are currently absorbing and seeing close to 80% of all of San Francisco's commercial and residential development. And I'm also very proud of 50% of all of our affordable and middle-income housing. A big part of my work, simply because of the district I represent, has been around land use and planning, and I'm proud of the fact that over the last 8 years that I have fought for and won more affordable and middle-income housing than any city legislator in the nation for our city. Thank you. Because of my deep investment in education, first starting out as a youth community organizer before I joined the Board of Education, I've also made it a priority to make sure that we are funding public education here in San Francisco. I was proud to re-author, that deserves applause just in and of itself. I was proud to re-author Tom Amiano's Public Education Enrichment Fund, which is bringing close to $70 million to our public schools that are funding the very things that we lost because of Prop 13 and the decimation of taxpayer dollar investment in our public school system, bringing back librarians and art teachers and toilet paper back into our schools again. And I was really excited most recently in 2016, thanks to many of your support, the passage of Proposition W, a luxury real estate transfer tax that allowed us to make San Francisco the only city in the country to make community college free for every resident in our city. This measure passed, and in August of this year, we launched Free City College, and we saw a 51% increase in enrollment of San Francisco residents in community college again. And the reason why City College is so important is because it is our only lifelong learning institution in the nation. We should be investing in community college. It's a place where all of us can go to go back for educational opportunities. And frankly, it is time that we in this country reinvest in our citizens again and reinvest in our infrastructure. Over the last 40 years, what we've seen throughout the country is a divestment from the production of affordable housing, divestment from a public education and higher education system, a divestment from our healthcare system and other social safety nets that is decimating the middle class in America. Through the 1970s, middle-class Americans outnumbered those in the low and upper income brackets. That is now no longer the case. And here in San Francisco, we have the fastest growing income gap between the rich and the poor in the country, according to the Brookings Institute. So a big part of my work is figuring out how we can regrow the middle class here in San Francisco and again. And I believe that we have to do it by investing in our community, whether it means community college or housing. And this year, Supervisor Yee and I announced in September, we are launching a $130 million revenue measure through a gross receipts tax on our commercial landlords to raise money to make early childhood education and childcare affordable for every family in San Francisco. We're gathering signatures for it now. I hope you will sign the measure. The signatures are due on Monday. And if we get this measure on the ballot, it will allow us to ask the voters to consider this revenue measure, which will do three things. One, it will take the 4,200 low-income families that are currently on the wait list for childcare today off the waiting list immediately. Second, we are going to increase subsidies for families that make up to $200,000 a year to to access childcare as well, because frankly, we know our middle class is struggling to stay in San Francisco too. And third, we are going to finally raise the wages of our childcare workers, 80% of whom are women of color that make on average $26,000 a year to take care of the most important people in our community, our babies and our children. And we know that if we're going to professionalize this class, we need to pay the workers what they need to also afford to live in the city and provide the care that our children deserve. Three final things that I will note with. One, I was a proud author of our minimum wage ordinance in 2014, raising our minimum wage workers to $15 an hour. We will be at $15 this July of 2018, which is incredibly exciting. It is the most progressive and strongest minimum wage ordinance in the country, lifting all of our workers, 2/3 of whom are women, by the way. This is a women's issue as well. And next, with our late Mayor Ed Lee, worked with him. He granted our office $6.6 million to open a 24-hour medical respite shelter in the south of Market for homeless residents who are sick and often can't get into our single adult shelters because our staff don't have the qualifications or the resources to take care of them. The sickest people are often on our streets because our shelters cannot accept them. This 24-hour medical respite shelter, which opened in December of this year, a week after the mayor passed away, unfortunately, is now going to be staffed by nurses, clinicians, and psychologists 24 hours a day. So our HOT team finally has a place to take people to when they're sick so they can get the care that they deserve with a bed. And then finally, one of my first commitments to the city is to make sure that as mayor that we have a clean city. Over the last 2 years, we have seen a tremendous rise in cleaning service requests. In 2015, there was 40,000 cleaning requests throughout the city. Last year, it rose to almost 80,000. This year, we're on pace to hit 100,000 by the end of the fiscal year. 1/3 of those requests are in the district that I represent. We are clearly seeing a need for more services, both street cleaning and other services, and I'm committed to making sure that this city that we invest the resources that we need to have street cleaners that keep all of our neighborhoods safe and clean. So, I thought I would open up for, I'm sorry, I didn't see the person. Am I on time? Oh, you know what? Why don't we open up for questions? Yeah.
Okay, so
there'll be more time for questions. Yeah.
Hi. So I'm sorry. The one thing that I wanted to do tonight that I forgot to say when I was talking is I want to ask each of the mayoral candidates one question. And the question I want to ask is that before Mayor Lee passed away, he did an executive directive of saying that we need to build an additional 5,000 units of housing every year for the next 20 years. And so what I want to ask each candidate is that, do you support that executive directive, and will you, when you're elected mayor, will you see that through?
So yes, I'm committed to directive. In fact, my district is building most of those 5,000 units every year. I have always believed in development and building. We absolutely need it. But as we do it, I also believe that we should ask our market rate developers, as we confer value on their land, by the way, when we add height and density to someone's land, we add value, that they share that value back with our city by building more affordable and middle-income housing. So I believe in development and building, but in that building, I think we must intentionally ensure that a percentage of it is set aside for our working class and middle class residents. A lot of people don't know this, but under federal HUD guidelines, 60% of San Franciscans qualify for affordable housing. 60% of San Franciscans qualify for affordable housing. That is how expensive our city has become. So when we talk about affordable housing, it's not just for the poorest residents. It really covers middle class residents as well. And I'm the first supervisor that has won serious middle class housing in the projects in my district, whether it is in Seawall Lot 337, the Giants parking lot, in the 5M project, which is a Chronicle building on 5th and Mission, all the way to 160 Folsom, where actually 40% of those units are set aside for middle class home ownership opportunities. All of those have been approved and are go through the process right now. But something I'll add to Todd's question is that far more than the entitlement process, because we actually have entitled thousands of units of housing, is making sure that they actually get built once they're approved. And I think we have a lot of work to do at the city side to make sure that once you go through all the hoops, you gain the community support, you gain the board of supervisor support, you gain the mayor's support, and you're building a good project that the community wants to see happening, that we streamline the permitting process afterwards to ensure that you're not held up in the process and that the building happens immediately once you're approved. Oh, got it. So I'm calling on people. Okay, I really can't see everyone. Okay, but I will do the best that I can. This gentleman was the first person to raise his hand. I'm so sorry.
Do you want me to call? Sure.
Yeah, thank you. But you had raised your hand first.
Yes, I did. Thank you. First off, let me say thank you, Jane, because you were one of the first supervisors. For those of you who don't know, my name is Ike Pinkston. I was one of the Frisco 5 hunger strikers in front of the police station a couple of years ago. And you were one of the first supervisors that came out about what was going on with Greg Sir and the police department. So that's basically what my question is if you get elected, how or what do you feel you can do to ensure police accountability? Because police are running rampant in this city. Not too long ago, in this past weekend, a homeless person was beat up over a Snicker bar. So whether you feel it's a wrong question or not, it's a question that needs to be answered.
Yeah, no, I'll repeat the question, but I mean, I just want to say, in a crowd this large, there's going to be really diverse perspectives and opinions, and so as best as we can, if we can respect those that are asking the question, even if you disagree with it, I think that we should try to maintain that. I realize I'm the first candidate to go up, is that right, Don? So, setting ground rules. I used to be a youth organizer, so that's where that comes from. Actually, working with high school students really prepares you for politics. And they're more direct. But the question was, what can we do to ensure that we have a police department that is serving our communities and that we're moving forward reforms that, many members of the community are asking, that often feel that the police is not on their side working to make our neighborhoods safer. I don't know if that was a good paraphrasing. I think that our police department is an incredibly important institution and part of San Francisco and part of keeping us safe. And we also have to make sure that from command staff down to our officers, that people are being held accountable as public servants to making sure that they make everyone in San Francisco feel safe. Not just some people, not just some neighborhoods, but every neighborhood feels safe when they see a police officer patrolling in their neighborhood. And I think a lot of that comes both with leadership. Two, we want to make sure that we are implementing the reforms suggested by the Department of Justice under the Obama administration, which the Trump administration, by the way, has totally gotten rid of that part of the DOJ's work, which is incredibly disappointing. And so I think that we have to make sure that a mixture of leadership ensuring that our police department is there for all of our neighborhoods and all of our communities is incredibly important. We also want to see diversity at the command staff level, and as much as possible, that local San Francisco residents are accessing those jobs and then policing their neighborhoods. And I think that we can do a lot more to make sure our new hires and our new recruits are coming out of San Francisco's public school system, and that those that are growing up here and know our communities are serving our community again. In fact, I've been very lucky in District 6. Several of my police captains grew up in San Francisco. They are natives, they went to school here, and they were amazing because they still live here and they care about this community, and they have to go to the grocery store on the weekends and meet many of the constituents that they interface with, and so they want to make sure that they're good neighbors. I know that's a simplistic answer to the question that you asked, but I think it's a mixture of making sure that we're implementing reforms, but also appropriately sizing the police budgets and the different things that they ask for to make sure that these are the sorts of things that we want to see here in the community. Okay, Patrick. All right, Patrick.
Yes.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, dear.
Nice T-shirt.
Thank you. Oh, in case anybody hasn't
Oh,
seen it.
Patrick, ask your question.
The problem with a lot of the major developers is they will make these commitments to build affordable or low-income housing, whether it's on-site or off-site. Is it feasible that they should be required to complete all those commitments before they're allowed to rent or sell any of the market rate where they're making all their money?
In every negotiation that I have participated in. Oh, I'm so sorry. The question was, when you negotiate affordable middle-income housing in these development deals, is there any way that you can ensure that before it's rented, that the developer actually meets their obligations? So in every single negotiation that I have participated in, we have tied their obligation to open affordable or middle-income housing with their certificates of occupancy. So they don't get their CAO, which means no one can move in. The DBI won't issue their certificates of occupancy until they have fulfilled their obligations. So there's a number of different things. Also, if you're doing off-site and you're feeing out, so you're paying a fee to the city, we tie your permits to it. So you don't even get the permits until you've paid at different points throughout the construction process. So all of that is embedded in the negotiations because we don't want to see a building open with empty promises either. Okay, so your question is, the leading cause of death for men your age is homicide and violence, and what can the mayor's office do to combat that? And then also, like feelings about police enforcement of non-violent crimes, right, in general. So, how to best answer that? This violence is a huge public health crisis throughout our country. We are fortunate here in San Francisco to have one of the lowest homicide rates in the nation. We paired that with one of the higher property crime rates in the country as well. But actually, SFPD has done a tremendous job in making sure that we have, the least homicides per capita in this country. And I think that we need to continue that work. But I have to add, it's not just the police that's doing that work. It is our investment in our after school programs and community-based organizations that do violence prevention work in San Francisco that, like programs like United Players that are keeping youth off the streets and providing alternatives for young people that are leading them to college or to jobs. All of those sorts of investments help make our neighborhoods safer.
Right back there, yes. Yeah.
So I'm going to come back to housing, and for many of us, and data supports it, Airbnb is one of the leading causes for the real estate speculation. I live in the Castro. There are at least 5 or 6 luxury condos, and I can tell you, I walk around all the time, and they're mostly empty. When I see a light come on, there are people there for just a weekend or a week. So they're definitely Airbnb. In my neighborhood, I walk along and you see the Airbnb locks. So I have friends that have been illegally evicted out of their homes, and they have to leave the Bay Area. So how can we keep them in? And I know that Berlin just passed something to limit Airbnb's impact on the city because they were in the same crisis we are. But I hear you support Airbnb, and that makes me nervous to support you.
Okay. So the question was about regulations around short-term rentals, primarily known through the company Airbnb. And so first of all, I have voted for every single legislation that has regulated short-term rentals in our city. And I've done that for multiple reasons. One, land use and our zoning is actually a map of what we believe a healthy city should look like. So how much office, which creates certain types of jobs, and how much manufacturing, production, distribution, repair, which creates other types of jobs, how much hotel, how much residential, and where, right? So we have mapped the city in a certain way where actually the vast majority of our land is dedicated towards residential uses. And we do that for a reason because we want to make sure that there are enough housing for people to live in and that we have places for people to build housing. Now, the issue with short-term rentals isn't truly short-term rentals. If you are going on vacation for 2 weeks or you have a summer internship somewhere else, I support short-term rentals, to make a little bit of extra cash and to provide an additional use to your house. What I have an issue with is what we saw as Airbnb kind of developed, which is wholesale units being taken off the market, in fact, with evictions on their record, so that they can turn them into full-time hotels. Right? We zone certain things hotels for a reason. And hotels provide a certain type of use also. They're zoned a certain way. They have higher Department of Building Inspection codes. They also hire union workers that serve the tourists that come in. There's a reason why we have a hotel industry. And I don't want our residential neighborhoods to turn into hotels when we already have set aside neighborhoods like the downtown area where those hotels are supposed to be. the legislation didn't go as far as I wanted to. I'm glad that we're regulating. I'm glad that we're requiring a business license, because that is, you're doing a commercial activity in your home, so you should get a business license and you should register with the city. And last month, Airbnb took thousands of people that were illegally renting out full homes that no one was living in, that could have been a home for somebody else. And they started to take that out because of the legislation that we passed and the lawsuit that they actually lost. But finally, I do think that we need to talk about a hard cap on nights. And you know, I've long proposed 90 days. It's a summer for a student when they go away for the summer, that they can rent their unit to somebody else. But I really need to, I think homes should be homes. And so that has long been my position. And my track record and voting records demonstrates that. That all of you know if you're a parent. Oh, sorry, the question was, do I have a plan to keep teachers who can no longer afford to live in San Francisco in the city, and how do we build more housing for our teachers?
Also afford to buy.
Afford to buy, okay. So both afford to rent and afford to buy. So I've been working on this issue since I've been on the Board of Education. So when I was on the school board, you spend most of your time saying, oh, we don't have enough pens, we don't have enough paper, we don't have teachers. There's one thing actually the school district has too much of, and that is land. We have a lot of surplus property. And so we should use our surplus property to generate value for a school district. It could be revenue for a classroom, it could be housing for our teachers, it could be grocery stores in neighborhoods that are food deserts, you know, things that impact our opportunity and achievement gap. And one of the first sites that I worked on was 1950 Mission. Actually, it used to be part of the district that I represent before redistricting in 2012, and ensure that it became 100% affordable housing for our families. This is a crisis in our city. Our teachers cannot afford to live in the city that they teach our children in, and we cannot sustain. I'm going to make my concluding remarks. I just want to say one of the most important things that we can be doing right now in this country today is regrowing our middle class. I know I started my statement to talk about that. Middle class Americans used to outnumber low and high income Americans. In San Francisco, middle class used to make up 45% of our population. As of 2012, it came down to 34%. We have to be doing everything that we can to reinvest in our citizens, whether it's through housing, education, healthcare, our infrastructure system, to make sure that we are regrowing our middle class again. That is a fight that's happening in Washington, D.C. right now. Over the last 40 years, we have seen government decimate funding to the things that have allowed our country to grow prosperously, evenly, and to grow a middle class. And I think we here in San Francisco have a very unique role. We are not just a liberal city, we are also a wealthy city, which means we can afford to enact dream policies that other municipalities can't even fantasize about. We made community college free again. We are the only country in the city to do that, and you did that by voting for Proposition W. And my commitment as mayor is not just to serve our residents, which I think is so important to do, but to show our country what it means when we invest in people again, and to demonstrate the outcomes of what it means to make America great again. And so I hope that you will join me. I would love to have your support in the 4-month sprint before the June 5th mayoral race, but I think that we have to make sure that we're taking care of everyone in the city, but we also have to be an example and a beacon for the rest of the country of what it means when local government invests in us again. Thank you very much.